Americans must know that we are putting the American people first again. On trade, so true, on trade, on immigration, on foreign policy, the jobs, incomes, and security of the American worker will always be my first priority. No country has ever prospered that failed to put its own interests first. Both our friends and our enemies put their countries above ours. And we, while being fair to them, must start doing the same. We will no longer surrender this country or its people to the false song of globalism. The nation state remains the true foundation for happiness and harmony. I am skeptical of international unions that tie us up and bring America down, and will never enter. And under my administration, we will never enter America into any agreement that reduces our ability to control our own affairs.
Okay, Donald Trump's speech today, his first major foreign policy speech, read from a teleprompter, very different than the off-the-cuff type of stuff that we've been used to. It's a new Donald Trump. Some don't like the delivery. They say it's too stiff. I think the delivery is unimportant. Of course, we like the old Donald Trump better. We like the insulting Donald Trump. We like the blustery Donald Trump. We like the real Donald Trump. But that's irrelevant. What's relevant now is what his policies are as foreign policy. Fundamentally, they're America first, as we have said in this program on hour number one. It's America first, not America last. Hillary stands for the opposite. She wants America as an entity to dissolve completely, where the flag itself will become a memento, an antique memento of the past. So he's flag-waving. He is definitely a nationalist, and he is saying America first. So where did the idea of America first come from? Many of you don't know history. I do. The America First Committee was the first non-interventionist pressure group against the American entry into World War II, and it appeared in 1940. And it dissolved on December 10th, 1941, 3 days after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Just so you know, they didn't continue their anti-war rhetoric after the attack on Pearl Harbor, but it was a non-interventionist pressure group. So who was in the America First Committee in the beginning? It was started in 1940 by Yale Law School student R. Douglas Stewart. Who's he? He's the son of the co-founder of Quaker Oats, along with other students, including, ready for this, future President Gerald Ford, future Peace Corps Director Sergeant Shriver, future U.S. Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart when they were students. Future President JFK contributed $100, along with a note that said, "What you all are doing is vital." At its peak, America First claimed 800,000 dues-paying members in 450 chapters, located mostly in a 300-mile radius of Chicago. Now, what was the America First Committee, and what was it accused of being? Well, the America First Committee originally gained great strength by merging with the more left-wing Keep America Out of War Committee, whose leaders included Norman Thomas and John T. Flynn. They had 135,000 members in 60 chapters in Illinois, its strongest state. Now, without reading all of the people involved, I think the most prominent member is important for you to know, and that would be the great aviator Charles Lindbergh, who was accused, by the way, of being a Nazi sympathizer because he was a non-interventionist, by the way. That's the history of this. It's an interesting thing, the way the media works. Lindbergh did not want Americans to go to war in World War II, so people called him sort of a sympathizer with the Nazis, which I don't believe is true at all. But I'm not here to argue about 1939 and 1940. The America First Committee, upon which Donald Trump is basing his keynote speech on America First, has a history, and you should educate yourself on this history. Because, as I say, there were many prominent people involved in the America First movement at that time, including, are you ready? Socialist Party leader Norman Thomas and the aviator, as I mentioned, Charles A. Lindbergh, a great hero. Lindbergh was the first man to fly across the Atlantic alone in a little one-engine plane. It's an amazing feat. Other celebrities supporting America First were the great novelist Sinclair Lewis, the poet E.E. Cummings, Walt Disney, actress Lillian Gish, the great architect Frank Lloyd Wright wanted to join. But Frank Lloyd Wright, believe it or not, was rejected when the local board said that Frank Lloyd Wright had a reputation for immorality. I won't go into that one. The many student chapters of America First included future celebrities such as author Gore Vidal, when he was a student at Phillips Exeter Academy, and as I said, the future president, Gerald Ford at Yale University. So what did they stand for? Well, they launched a petition aimed at enforcing the 1939 Neutrality Act and forcing President Franklin Delano Roosevelt to keep his pledge to keep America out of the war. They distrusted Roosevelt and argued that he was lying to the American people. And I won't go into all of the little details of it. You just should know that this whole phraseology, or the phrase America First, has an origin. And the origin was, as I just described to you. And one of the most prominent members of the America First movement was Charles Lindbergh, who was accused of being sympathetic to Hitler. Why? Well, he was a frequent guest of Hitler in the 1930s. He was an admirer of the buildup of the Nazi Air Force, the Luftwaffe. And he had been actively involved in questioning the motives of the Roosevelt administration, etc. So you need to look into his anti-war stance from several different points of view. Lindbergh's first radio speech, which I wish we could get, Robert, that would be a great one to play on this show. Lindbergh's first radio speech was broadcast on September 15th, 1939, and it was played on the three major radio networks, the Mutual, National, and Columbia radio networks. And in this speech, Charles Lindbergh urged listeners to look beyond the speeches and propaganda they were being fed, and instead ask themselves who was writing the speeches and reports, who owned the newspapers, and who influenced the speakers. So there's a lot to be learned here, and there's a lot of tension now, just as there was a lot of tension then. And what you're going to hear over the next few days and weeks from the vermin in the media is that America, because I'm giving them a little groundwork, I'm telling you what's coming. I am the thinking man in talk radio. I lay out ideas that are then picked up by others. Watch what happens over the next few hours, a few days. Watch what happens on MSNBC and watch what happens on CNN. Mark my words. I am describing to you the history of this organization, America First. What you're going to hear from Wolf Blitzer and the other Quisling traitors in the United States of America is that Donald Trump's America First movement has a history. We just want to show it to you. And part of this history was a group called America First. And in this group, the great aviator Charles Lindbergh spoke, and then they're going to show you Nazi flags. They're going to show you him shaking hands with Hitler. And back to you, Faria. Do you have anything to add to that? That's what's coming. They won't tell you that John F. Kennedy was a member of America First. They won't tell you that Gerald Ford was a member of America First. They won't tell you any of those things. They're going to try and smear Trump as being an isolationist in the tradition of the America First movement of that time. I'm just giving you a little history of what's coming. I can tell you I know who owns the media. I know who runs the media. I know how the media operates. I know exactly what they're going to do. And although an anti-war message like this should normally, let's say a non-interventionist viewpoint, such as that expressed by Trump today, should normally be picked up by the left, and they should salute him for it, they're going to try and hang him by his own petard because they don't like him. No matter what he says and no matter what he stands for, they're going to try and hang him by his own words, letting a true criminal get away with virtual murder. And that murder could be Benghazi or many other areas where people have been found dead in the wake of the candidate on the other side of the aisle. Who else was in the anti-war movement and in America First? You'll have to read it yourself. Let me summarize it by saying to you the America First movement was a peace organization. It was an isolationist organization. It was an organization that said America should come first. And not engage in foreign, interventionism. Now, in our time, conservative commentator, and he's a great man, Pat Buchanan, praised America first and even used his name as a slogan. I don't know if Buchanan was one of the speechwriters for Trump. I'm not saying he was or wasn't. I don't know. But Buchanan's a brilliant writer, and it could be that he was involved or is involved in writing for Trump. I hope so. But we're going to find out a lot of things over the next few days about the whole America First sentiment of Donald Trump. And all of you anti-war 60s hippies who are listening to this show, you should know that all of your peace activities in the 60s, your peace strikes, your anti-war activities, you should be saluting Donald Trump, not attacking him. He just said he doesn't want intervention in foreign wars. So why would you attack him for that? I think you need to think about these things before you just become another, rabid hater of Donald Trump. Anyway, now I want to go back to the speech itself. I've given you my little backgrounder on the concept of America First, which is the keynote of his foreign policy. And he opened the speech vowing to shake the rust off America's foreign policy. He said he would outline a vision for U.S. foreign policy, quote, that replaces randomness with purpose, ideology with strategy, and chaos with peace. And, of course, he said, my foreign policy will always put the interests of the American people and American security first. He gave this speech at the famous Mayflower Hotel, and it was meant to appeal to Republican Party elites. And in that sense, I think he achieved his end in that he kept it very, very vanilla in most ways, while still sounding the populist themes that have got him to this point.